Our next presentation is by Bartosz Kazuła. He is an expert in many different things at STX Next. In part, he was part of the drive to introduce React Native to our tech stack, and I hear stories of some arguments between him and other people at the company to introduce this technology. Right now, we are using the React Native, most assuredly, and being in charge of marketing and in charge of our blog, I have also worked with Bartosz on publishing a piece about React Native and why you should use this. And still, we're going to talk about something a little bit different because this presentation is actually going to be about the differences between Python and Go syntax. I'm very curious to hear it myself since not so long ago, our sales and marketing team had the opportunity to take part in coding boot camps. We learned about Python syntax, but for Go, I don't know. So let's learn about that. Bartosz Kazuła.
Thanks, Kuba. I know your name. All right, so my name is Bartosz Kazuła, and today I want to talk a little about differences between and similarities between Python and Go syntaxes. So I was inspired by an article wrote by Wojciech Likota, which is like the most popular article on our blog. All right, so first thing, is it Go or Golang? Actually, the name of the language is Go, and what's the history behind the Golang? Because it's really difficult to Google for Go and find answer that we want to see. So, for example, when you put Go, you can see Pokemon Go. So, so the name Golang was made to make the googling easier. Okay, so I will tell a couple of words about Go. What is Go? Go is a strongly typed compiled programming language that is very fast. It compiles fast, and it's simple, effective, and reliable. So we can build easily efficient software that we want to push on our production. Let's take a look at the guys who are responsible, and we can blame them for creating the Go language. So the first person is Robert Gizmer. So he's one of the creators of C language. We've got as well Rob Pike, who introduces Unix. Ken Thompson, who was one of the creators of B language. And both of guys, so Rob Pike and Ken Thompson, created UTF-8, what is very common use right now. All those guys are working for Google right now. So what could go wrong with Go language? All right. So main goals for Go are that the syntax must be clean, small, and it has to be compiled fast with modern features in board. It has built-in concurrency. It's statically typed, so it executes faster than Python. It has built-in garbage collector. It has C-like syntax, and one of the goals is to make programmers' life easier, which actually I think happened. Before I start comparing, one more thing. I want to use statically typed Python, but keep in mind that Go is strongly typed language, even if it pass values to variables without explicit type. Moreover, I assume that most of you knows Python, so I won't focus mostly on Python and telling how it works and how it look like. Okay, so let's do actual comparison. What is similar between Go and Python? First thing, which is actually more like difference, but it is better and better with every release. So in Python, we've got virtual envs. so we can build, so we can install with PIP the packages which are used in our projects and or dependencies. So these packages are kept in virtual env directory. When it comes to Go, we've got one workspace for all projects. So can be like more difficult to know where to put my project. We don't have PIP, so we've got go get command, and there is one problem. We have no versioning of dependencies. So Google has introduced GoDep tool, which is not right now built-in language, but we can use it. They said it's production ready, and we still got community tools that we can use. And dependencies are kept within the source directory or inventor directory within our project. But when we have source directory, I will show you that we've got, like, this is my workspace I want to work within, and I've got like a lot of dependencies that I want to use in my project. So it can be difficult to find actually my workspace I want to create project in. All right, so like the very first program that every programmer writes is Hello World. So Python is scripting language, so we can make Hello World one-liner. When it comes to Go, we need to introduce the package we want to work in. So the main entry point to Go program is package main. We need to import a package which is responsible for printing to our console. And we need to create function main, which is entry point to our application. And then we can use from package fmt function print, and we will see hello world. Variables and constants. So with Python we have no fireworks here. It's easy syntax, but when it comes to make a constant, there are no constants in Python. So by convention, we use capital letters to show that this should not change. And about Go, as I said before, it's strongly typed language, so we need to put type to before we will actually assign value, or we can use syntax colon equals, which will decide on what type is it for us. And the missing feature, constants are built in language. Lists. So again, it's very easy to do in Python. When it comes to Go, we need to create a list that is with constant length. So by default, it is 3 zeros when we put 3 elements. We can do that syntax to make initial values that are within our list, and assigning value with index is the same as in Python. When it comes to appending the value, it's not possible, as we declared that that list will be just 3 elements. But it was actually resolved by Go. So we don't need to pass how many elements we will have in our list, but it's not a list anymore, it's called slice. Slices are very similar to list in Python. Actually, it works the same, but we have like difference between what is list in Go and what is slides and what is slice. But one thing that we cannot do with Go, we cannot assign value to any index. So the very first thing we need to do when we want to create an element in our slice is to append elements. So the element is created, and we can now assign new value to it. But if we put index 1, it will call an error. Dicts or maps. So Python, once again, very easy. And when it comes to Go, we just need to provide what type will key have and what type will value have. And other things are the same without the delete function, which will not return value. How to check if key is present? So we can use syntax if key is in our list, or we can just use get function in Python. When it comes to Go, we need to pass two attributes to get our value from our map. So the first value is element that it will be returned from this dict, and if the element is actually present. So here we can see actually nice syntax with Go. So we can assign values to the scope of if statement, so it won't be accessible from outside the scope. And then we check if the key and value is actually present, and then we print it. All right, so that's about similarities. There are a lot of more similarities, but it's just syntax. Let's take a look at differences, which is actually more important. So exceptions. In Python, we use try except block. We try to make some operation, and then we catch the exception, and we do something that will handle it. When it comes to Go, Goofer, where are you going? Oh, okay. Go doesn't have exceptions, but instead, it has error handling, which is just if statement. So our functions should return some result, and if it was successful or not, and if not, it should return error. And right under using this function, we should check if error is none, or in Go it's nil, and then handle it. Okay, classes. Is a thing when it comes to Python. We can assign attributes, we can create functions, we've got self keyword, we can provide parameters, and so on. Okay. One thing, Go is functional language, so it does not have classes. But instead, it got something called structures. So what is structure? We can compare it to class, but keep in mind that in functional language we have no object, so we can create attributes that will be assigned to some kind of variable, and we can define functions that will be available from it. So we have no self variable accessible. We've got just the variable it by itself that is passed to our function. So as I said before, we've got no objects, but we've got variables. And actually, the difference is not big, but we need to understand that the variable on the right side is not an object. It's still variable with some structure that show us how to use it and what can happen with it. About inheritance, it does not exist. But instead, we've got composition over inheritance. So one of the pattern used in object-oriented programming, we can create a structure with person, which will have first name and last name. And when we want to, for example, create employee, we can assign a person to some kind of variable, and then go deeper with other variables we need to have in this, let's call it, object. Okay, so to summarize, with Python, we've got classes and objects. We've got self keywords. We've got multiple inheritance and method overloading. In Go, we don't have classes and objects. We have structs and variables. Instead of self keyword, we've got reference to actual variable. We have no inheritance. We've got composition, and we cannot overload methods. So Go is called as wow, cool language. It makes programmers' life easier and so on. So why it's called like that? For example, in Go, deferred functions does not exist. So what is deferred function? It's a function that it's actually a call of function that will happen after our function will return some statement. So at the very end of the function. So for example, when we open the file, for example, file.txt, we check for error, and to not forget to close this this file, we can defer our function that we can be sure that it will be called right on the bottom of our function. Switch case syntax. So it just simplified if else syntax, but in my opinion, it's more readable than the actual if-elif syntax in Python. And moreover, it's C syntax. So when you are C, C++, and so on programmer, it's like more familiar to you. We've got named return statements, which in my opinion are cool. So we, on the very beginning of our function, we put what we want to return and what it should be called. So it's not me. So in our function, we have actually that variable which we can assign value, and then we put just a return statement without any value that that ought to be returned. So Go will return the value with these types and in that order that we defined here. Is that okay? It's just syntax sugar, but it's okay when we create documentation for our function, which is a very common pattern in Go, that all functions that are public should be well documented. So when we see my function, which has no parameters and it returns value which is int, it's easier to read than looking on the return statements, which and determine what will be actually returned from this function. Interfaces. Something I'm missing in Python is an interface. So when it comes to interfaces, we defined the shape of variable, how it should actually destruct, how it should like, and we can assign values to destruct. But to determine if the variable we pass is of this type, so we can so this interface, all functions that are defined here must be defined on the struct. So it has no like strict type checking. It just looks if all methods that are passed to this interface are created in our struct. Okay, to sum up and a little FAQ. Is Go better the language than Python? No, it might be, but it depends on what we need to create. So what is our requirement for the language? Is Go a perspective language? Yes, it is. It grows very fast. Community is bigger and bigger every day, and Go is still making changes to this language, and the changes are better with every release. In my opinion, what I love about Go is the time of the compilation and execution. It is very, very fast. It has built-in concurrency, and it has C syntax, so I'm more familiar with C syntax. You've got interfaces finally, and strong typing, which is very helpful. But as we know in Python, we've got strong typing as well, if you want to. What I hate, the error handling. I assume that that's the reason why Gopher just ran away, be, because in Go we have no exceptions, and it's, in my opinion, it's very unreadable syntax when we need to handle our error right underneath the function call. Lack of real classes. Yeah, so structs are, in my opinion, just workaround for the real classes. I have in mind that Go is functional language, but Python can be functional as well. So yeah, so real classes are that what I miss, and dependencies, it will be better. It will be. I'm waiting. Google say it. They will provide one universal tool to manage our dependencies, and it has duck typing. So when someone doesn't know what duck typing is, it's just checking if the thing with the interfaces. So it's just checking if the variable is implemented with interface by checking if it has methods and variables, not with assigning the actual type to it. All right, so everything from me. Thank you. And are there any questions?
Okay, quite a few. Let me get to you. Here you go.
You said that you like Go interfaces and you hate Go duck typing, but
Yeah.
like you said later, this is tied together. Could you tell more how practically the same thing is a good point and a bad point of the language for you?
Okay, so Go has strong types. So for example, I know you will hate me, but for example, in PHP, we can check if this class is created with this interface, not if it has all methods implemented. So it still Go still have interfaces. That's cool, but not but uncool thing about Go is how it checks if this variable if of this interface that but it could just use the strong typings like PHP did or so on. So that's why I do like it and I hate it.
Okay, I believe that answers that. 4 more minutes for questions, more or less. I think I saw some in the back. Could you raise your hands again? Okay. Somebody with a microphone. Oh,
Okay.
come on. Ah, okay. Sorry, there was
Okay.
somebody behind you.
So my question is about the defer keyword in Go. How would you compare it to the Python context managers?
All right, so context manager is it gives context to the scope of the block of code, and defer functions is just the call of the function we defined before, right after the return statement. So it's just syntax sugar, in my opinion, and it's cool because I can't remember a lot of times that I need to close a file, for example. So I've got like 2 lines next to each other that opens the file and close the file. Is that okay? Answer?
So you think that with the context managers that you have to implement the exit function and so on, that is too problematic, or there's more code involved, and that is why it's better to have defer keyword, or?
No, actually, defer keyword works with other approach than context manager. So context manager will not execute after the return statement of the function.
Yeah, but after you exit, it executes the function after you exit the context. So
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
To me, it sounded similar, so this is why I asked my question.
This is
Thank you
similar
for your
actually,
answer.
but this is similar, but not the same.
Okay.
So it depends on use cases when it will be better to use context manager and defer function. Yeah.
Okay, and I think with that discussion, we'll have to conclude. There's a few more announcements before lunch, so give it up once again for Bartosz.
Thank you.